Phil, step out from the post.
I'm not doing this without lawyers.
The meth you walked through staff entry this morning in your lunch bag, we recovered it.
This operation had been in the works for nearly 2 months. Tanner Wade Hollifield, a federal correctional officer at USP Atlanta, walked right into it. He is about to find out that the message he sent on a Friday morning is sitting in a federal evidence folder.
I said lawyer. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
$5,000 Calvin Moss at the pump, 7:54 this morning. We have it on video.
I am not saying
you can stand
that
there
all
all day.
The lunch bag cleared the staff entry K9. The Mylar pouch held. The coffee grounds between the seals did exactly what he had been told they would do. And by the time Tanner Wade Hollifield walked through the staff door at USP Atlanta that Friday morning, an FBI surveillance team had already watched him take $5,000 in cash from a man named Calvin Moss in a gas station parking lot on the north side of the city. The 4 ounces of crystal methamphetamine inside his thermal lunch bag had been on camera since the moment it changed hands. The investigation that ended his career had been running for almost 2 months. He had logged every step of it himself, in plain English, on his personal phone. Before we go any further, when you picture the inside of a federal penitentiary, do you picture the doors locking from the inmate side or the staff side? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. This channel covers the cases that fall apart from the inside out, and we post a new one every week. Tanner Wade Hollifield was born in 1991 in Jasper, Georgia, the county seat of Pickens County, a stretch of rolling foothills in the southern Appalachians about an hour north of Atlanta, where the population had not crossed 30,000 until he was already in middle school. His father worked maintenance for the county school system. His mother kept the books for a small heating and air outfit out of a converted garage on Highway 53. The Hollifields lived in a double-wide on 3 acres at the end of a gravel road, with a riding mower, a 14-foot aluminum boat on a rusted trailer, and 2 beagles named Rosie and Buster that slept under the porch. He was a middle child, an older sister named Brittany, 2 years up, who went to nursing school in Dahlonega, a younger brother named Cody, 4 years down, who would eventually take over the heating and air route from their mother. Tanner was the one who hunted with their father every November in a stretch of leased pine forest on the Gilmer County line. He shot his first deer at 11. By 13, he was field dressing on his own. He was a defensive end at Pickens High School, not all-county, not a recruit, but 2-year starter, voted most improved by the coaches his senior season, the kind of player who got into every game in the 4th quarter when the score was already settled, and who left the locker room smelling like the same off-brand body spray as everyone else. His senior yearbook quote was a line from a country song. The photograph beside it showed him in pads with his helmet under his arm and a smear of black grease still under his right eye. He graduated in the spring of 2009. The economy was bad. The construction jobs his uncle had promised him in Cherokee County had dried up. He took 2 years at Chattahoochee Technical College in Canton, working toward an associate's in criminal justice, paying for it with a part-time job at the Walmart distribution center off I-575. He did not finish the degree. He came within 9 credit hours and stopped going. For most of his early 20s, he drifted. He worked a year as a private security guard at a hospital in Marietta. He worked 8 months at a logistics warehouse outside Cartersville, running a forklift on the 3rd shift. He bartended on weekends at a place called the Iron Horse Saloon off Highway 5. He moved out of his parents' house at 23 into a 1-bedroom apartment behind a Mexican restaurant in Holly Springs. In late 2018, an old friend from the Pickens football team, a man who had gone into the Bureau of Prisons 2 years earlier and was now stationed at FCI Jessup, told him over a beer that the BOP was hiring. The pay was $38,000 to start, with the kind of federal benefits a kid from Pickens County did not see in his other options: health insurance, pension, 20-year retirement. The training academy was at Glencoe, Georgia, on the coast. 3 weeks of paid instruction, followed by on-the-job training at his assigned post. He applied in January 2019. He passed the physical fitness test on his first attempt. He cleared the background check. Nothing on him beyond a single underage possession citation from a parking lot in Canton when he was 19, which he disclosed on the form. He scored a 72 on the entrance examination. He was offered a position in March and reported to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at Glencoe in May. Glencoe was where the federal government turned civilians into corrections officers. 3 weeks of classroom instruction on the history of the BOP, the Code of Federal Regulations, use of force policy, contraband interdiction, suicide prevention, and the federal statutes that governed every interaction between a CO and an inmate. 2 weeks of physical training, mock cell extractions in a converted gymnasium, firearms qualification at an outdoor range in the coastal heat. His evaluations were unremarkable. The instructors marked him reliable and respectful of authority. One supervisor noted in writing that he was easily led by stronger personalities in the cohort, but otherwise compliant with all training expectations. He graduated in the bottom third of his class. He was assigned to USP Atlanta, the federal penitentiary on McDonough Boulevard, a 40-minute commute from his parents' house, and only 22 minutes from the apartment in Marietta, where he was now living with a woman named Hannah Greer. Hannah was a dental hygienist. They had met at a country bar in Smyrna in the summer of 2018, just before he applied to the BOP. She was 26. He was 27. By the time he started at USP Atlanta in the fall of 2019, they were engaged. The ring was a half-carat solitaire from a K Jewelers in Town Center Mall. He had paid for it in 24 monthly installments. For 4 years, he worked the housing units at USP Atlanta. He pulled a written reprimand in March 2022 for showing up 12 minutes late to a shift on a Sunday morning, the result of a flat tire on I-285, and beyond that, his file held nothing. He was assigned to Unit B1, a general population housing block, in the fall of 2023. He was 32 years old. He had been a federal correctional officer for 4 years and 7 months. He did not yet know the name Marquez Tatum. A federal penitentiary is built on an inversion that most people never think about. The inmates inside are searched constantly. Their cells are tossed at random. Their visits are recorded. Their phone calls are monitored. Their mail is opened. Every piece of contraband that exists inside the walls had to cross a threshold to get there. And the threshold the inmates pass through is the most heavily surveilled border in American life. The threshold the staff passes through is not. USP Atlanta sits on a fenced campus on McDonough Boulevard, just south of the Atlanta City line, on a piece of ground the federal government has used as a prison since 1902. At the time Hollifield was assigned to Unit B1, the facility housed approximately 1,200 inmates across multiple housing blocks. The institution's classification had shifted over the years, at various points functioning as a high-security penitentiary, at other points operating with a medium-security population. The staff side of the equation, however, had stayed the same for decades. Every morning before a shift, a federal correctional officer parked in the staff lot, walked across a covered walkway, and passed through the staff entry. The entry contained a metal detector. It contained an X-ray belt for personal bags. It contained, on most days, a single Bureau of Prisons K-9 handler running a contraband detection dog through the line. The officers placed their lunch bags, their gym bags, and their personal items on the belt. They walked through the detector. They retrieved their bags. They cleared the door. The dogs were good at finding heroin. They were good at finding cocaine. They were trained on methamphetamine, fentanyl, marijuana, tobacco, and the volatile compounds in synthetic cannabinoids. They were not perfect. A 2019 internal review of BOP staff entry K-9 hit rates had identified specific concealment methods that produced false negatives at a rate the BOP did not publish. One of those methods involved triple sealing a target substance inside mylar pouches, with a layer of ground coffee between each seal. Beyond the entry, the architecture was simple. A corridor, a control booth, a series of Sallyport doors operated by an officer behind reinforced glass. On the other side of those doors was the secure perimeter, the housing units, the medical clinic, the kitchen, the recreation yard. Once an officer was inside, His lunch bag was no longer subject to search. He would carry it to his break room. He would eat from it during his lunch period. He would carry it back out at the end of his shift. The trust framework was simple too. The federal government did not pay a corrections officer $38,000 a year to start because the job was easy. It paid him that wage because every day he agreed, in writing, to be the harder side of a door whose other side held men with everything to gain by corrupting him. The inmates of Unit B1 had years on their sentences. They had outside contacts with cash. They had the patience to identify which officers were stressed, which were broke, which were lonely, which were proud, and which were already halfway gone. The system assumed the staff side was the harder side. The system assumed wrong. The first contact came through a commissary account. In late October 2023, a woman named Brianna Salyer-Toombs called the BOP's General Inquiry Line about depositing funds into the commissary account of an inmate at USP Atlanta named Marquez Devon Tatum. The call itself was routine. Salyer-Toombs was 28 years old, lived in an apartment complex in Stone Mountain, and identified herself as Tatum's long-term girlfriend. The funds went through. The call would have ended there. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening shift, Hollifield was working the floor of Unit B1 when Tatum stopped him in the day room. The conversation was short. Tatum asked whether the commissary deposit from his girlfriend had cleared. Hollifield said he could not check from the floor. Tatum said his girlfriend had been having trouble with the online portal and asked whether there was a number she could text directly with a question. Hollifield gave him a number. The number was Hollifield's personal cell phone. The first text from Brianna Salyer-Toombs arrived at 9:14 p.m. that night. It was polite. It asked about the commissary portal. Hollifield replied with the correct customer service number for Trust Fund Limited Inquiry Transaction System, the BOP's commissary contractor. He should have stopped there. He did not. The conversation continued for 3 weeks. The texts moved off SMS and onto WhatsApp on the 18th of November. The topics moved from the commissary portal to general questions about life inside Unit B1 to questions about Marquez specifically. Was he eating? Was he getting his medications? Was he safe? Hollifield answered all of them. By mid-December, the messages had drifted further. Salyer-Toombs asked whether there was anything Marquez needed that the commissary did not stock. She asked it casually. Hollifield said he would think about it. In late January 2024, an intermediary entered the conversation. His name was Calvin Moss. He was 36 years old, an unemployed former contractor with 2 prior state convictions for possession with intent to distribute. He texted Hollifield from a separate number and proposed a face-to-face meeting at a Waffle House in Marietta. Hollifield agreed. They met on a Tuesday afternoon. Moss bought him a coffee and laid out the terms. $1,500 cash for 2 cell phones, delivered to a curb near a Citgo station off Buford Highway in northeast Atlanta, before his next Thursday shift. Hollifield said yes at the table. The first drop was on the morning of February 8, 2024. He pulled into the gas station lot at 5:47 a.m. A silver Nissan Altima he had never seen before pulled in 3 minutes later. The driver, Moss, got out, walked to the trash can between the pumps, dropped a brown paper bag inside, and drove off without looking at him. Hollifield walked to the trash can, retrieved the bag, and put it in the passenger footwell of his truck. Inside was an envelope with $1,500 bills and 2 unopened Android smartphones in shrink-wrapped retail boxes. He carried the bag into the staff entry at USP Atlanta at 6:23 a.m. The bag cleared the K9. He took the phones out in the 3rd-floor staff bathroom and slipped them into the inner liner of his uniform jacket. By 8:40 a.m., both phones were inside Unit B1. He delivered them to a 3rd-tier cell during the morning count. Tatum did not say, "Thank you." Tatum did not look at him. The cell phones generated their own economy inside the unit within 48 hours. Inmates rented minutes for commissary credit. Tatum kept one of the 2 phones for himself and let the other circulate. The black market price for a working smartphone inside a federal facility in 2024 ran between $700 and $1,500, depending on condition and the willingness of the seller. Tatum had paid the curb price plus the officer's cut. He was operating on a margin. For the next 10 weeks, the WhatsApp conversation with Salyer Toombs continued. The tone shifted. The pretext of the commissary portal disappeared entirely. Messages now arrived in fragments, half a sentence at a time, late at night, with no greetings and no sign-offs. Hollifield deposited the $1,500 in a credit union account in 3 separate cash transactions, each just under the federal reporting threshold. He used some of it to make a payment on a used four-wheeler he had been wanting for 2 years. The four-wheeler sat in his driveway in Marietta. Hannah Greer asked him where the money for it had come from. He told her he had picked up overtime. He was lying to his fiancée. He was lying to his supervisor. He was lying on his federal employment forms. And he was about to take a payment 4 times larger than the first. The second offer came on the 11th of April. The text from Salyer Toombs was 8 words long. It said, $5K for the bigger drop, your lunchbox, Friday. Hollifield replied within 14 minutes. His reply confirmed the time. It confirmed the gas station location. It confirmed the carry method, the thermal lunch bag he took to every shift, with the false lining he had been told over a phone call would defeat the K9 if the meth was triple sealed in Mylar, with coffee grounds between the seals. He sent that reply at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. He sent it from his couch in Marietta. Hannah was asleep in the next room. By the time he closed the app, the message had already been ingested by the digital evidence pipeline of an FBI investigation he did not know existed. The investigation into Tanner Hollifield did not start with Tanner Hollifield. It started with Marquez Tatum's outside network. In late February 2024, 3 weeks after Hollifield's first cash drop, the FBI Atlanta field office obtained a warrant on the cell phone of a man named Reginald Bertram Yates, who was the subject of an unrelated narcotics conspiracy investigation in DeKalb County. Yates and Calvin Moss had spoken 19 times in the previous 60 days. The warrant on Yates's phone produced a number for Moss. The number for Moss produced a pattern of contact with Brianna Salyer Toombs. A subsequent warrant on Salyer Toombs' phone, signed by a federal magistrate on the 29th of February, was the door that opened the entire case. The agents pulled her WhatsApp message archive. They saw the conversation with the unknown number that had begun 3 months earlier as a commissary question. They saw the conversation drift. They saw the offer of $1,500 for 2 cell phones. They saw the confirmation. They saw the 8 words about the bigger drop and the lunchbox and Friday. They subpoenaed the subscriber information on the unknown number. The number was registered to Tanner Wade Hollifield of Marietta, Georgia, federal employee identification number on file with the Bureau of Prisons. The Atlanta field office contacted the BOP's Office of Internal Affairs the next morning. By the 2nd of March, a joint investigation was running with Hollifield as the named target. The agents reviewed his employment file. They pulled his staff entry video for every shift in February. They identified the lunch bag on the X-ray screen on the morning of February 8th. They identified the same bag exiting 6 days a week for the next 10 weeks. They mapped his cell phone movement against the gas station lot off Buford Highway. They built the timeline. The decision to let the second drop proceed was made on the 12th of April. The reasoning was operational. A meth introduction would produce a felony charge with a mandatory minimum substantially higher than the bribery and contraband counts standing alone. A controlled delivery would also produce a recoverable evidence package, the actual pouch with measurable weight and lab-verifiable purity, that would survive any defense attempt to argue that the WhatsApp messages were idle talk. The Friday in question was April 19, 2024. At 5:31 a.m., a surveillance van occupied the lot of an auto body shop across the boulevard from the Citgo station. 2 unmarked vehicles took up positions on the side streets. A pole camera mounted to a utility pole at the corner of the lot covered the trash can and the fuel pumps. A second team waited inside USP Atlanta to track the lunch bag once it cleared the staff entry. A K-9 handler from the BOP's contraband interdiction unit was briefed on the evasion technique and stood by for the morning shakedown. At 5:46 a.m., a black Chevy Silverado pulled into the gas station lot. The driver was Tanner Hollifield. He was in uniform. His lunch bag was on the passenger seat. At 5:49 a.m., a silver Nissan Altima pulled in. The driver was Calvin Moss. Moss got out, walked to the trash can, and dropped a brown paper bag. He drove off. At 5:51 a.m., Hollifield retrieved the bag. The bag contained $5,000 in cash and a single Mylar pouch sealed 3 times with ground coffee between the seals. The pouch contained approximately 113 grams of crystal methamphetamine. The FBI watched him drive to work. The lunch bag cleared the staff entry at USP Atlanta at 6:27 a.m. on the morning of April 19, 2024. The K-9 did not alert. The X-ray operator logged nothing unusual. Hollifield walked through the secure corridor, past the control booth, through the Sallyport doors, and into Unit B1. He placed the bag in his assigned locker in the break room. He clocked in for his shift at 6:34 a.m. He did not know that the silver Altima that had left the gas station lot had been followed for 9 miles before the surveillance team peeled off. He did not know that Calvin Moss had been photographed from 4 angles. He did not know that the poll camera had captured his retrieval of the paper bag in 4K resolution. He did not know that a federal magistrate had already signed a search warrant for the housing unit, contingent on his entry of the building. The shift proceeded as planned. At approximately 8:15 a.m., Hollifield transferred the Mylar pouch from the lunch bag's false lining to a small interior pocket of his uniform jacket. At approximately 9:40 a.m., during a routine walk of the tier, he delivered the pouch to a third-tier cell. The cell was occupied by Marquez Tatum and a cellmate who had been moved into the unit 8 days earlier. Tatum took the pouch. Hollifield kept walking. At 10:18 a.m., the BOP's contraband interdiction team initiated what was framed internally as a routine cell shakedown. They worked their way through the unit from the first tier upward. By 11:42 a.m., they had reached Tatum's cell. The pouch was recovered in a hollow space behind a removable section of plastic baseboard. The recovery was logged as routine. The investigative trail behind it was sealed. The next phase was the digital evidence. Agents executing a second warrant on Hollifield's personal phone, issued at 4:11 p.m. that afternoon and served against the device at his arrest, recovered the full WhatsApp message history with Salyer Toombs. They recovered the 8-word message about the bigger drop. They recovered his reply. They recovered the deletion attempts he had made on 3 earlier messages in the conversation, all of which had been preserved on the device's flash memory in unallocated space. They recovered, in his Google Photos backup, a selfie he had taken of himself in his BOP uniform 2 days after the first drop, standing in front of a mirror in his bathroom. They recovered a photograph of the used 4-wheeler in his driveway, taken the same week as the first cash drop. They recovered a screen capture of his bank account, showing the deposits, taken on his couch. The financial side took longer. A forensic accountant assigned to the case spent 3 weeks reconstructing Hollifield's transactions. The 3 cash deposits at the credit union, $800 bills total, split across structured transactions designed to fall below the federal reporting threshold, produced a separate financial structuring liability. The 4-wheeler had been bought outright with cash from a private seller in Ball Ground, Georgia, who provided the bill of sale on a subpoena. Total verified bribe payments across the 4 months, $8,400. Total street equivalent value of contraband introduced, approximately $11,000 in meth, plus the 2 cell phones at a combined estimated black market value of $2,400. The arithmetic, written out on a chart for the prosecution, was brutal in its smallness. He had broken the federal trust placed in him for the price of a used 4-wheeler and the down payment on a wedding he never got to have. The arrest was scheduled for the end of his shift. At 6:18 p.m., as Hollifield walked out of the staff entry of USP Atlanta, carrying the same lunch bag he had walked in with that morning, 2 FBI agents and a BOP internal affairs investigator were waiting in the staff lot. They were standing beside an unmarked Ford Explorer. They identified themselves as he reached the driver's side of his truck. Tanner Hollifield? Yes, sir. Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need you to step away from the vehicle and put your hands on the hood. He did. He did not run. He did not reach for his service belt. He did not say a word until the senior agent had finished a Mirandized statement and had asked him whether he understood. I understand. Do you want to talk to us tonight? There was a pause of about 6 seconds. He looked at the brick face of the housing unit he had just walked out of. He looked at his own truck. He looked at the lunch bag in his hand. Then he looked at the agent. Yeah, I'll talk. The interview was conducted at the FBI's Atlanta field office on Century Center Parkway. It lasted 4 hours and 11 minutes. He waived counsel. He waived it again on tape. He named Brianna Salier Toombs. He named Calvin Moss. He named Marquez Tatum. He described the first contact, the Waffle House meeting, the first drop, the four-wheeler, the second drop. He described the Mylar method and the coffee grounds and the location of the false lining in the thermal bag. He gave them his phone passcode without being asked. The senior agent asked him, near the end of the interview, why he had done it. His answer was on the recording. I don't know, man. I was tired. The first one, the phones, that felt like nothing, like I'd just dropped off a pizza. And then once it was the phones, the next one was easier. I told myself I'd stop after the four-wheeler. I told myself I'd stop after I paid off the ring. I was going to stop. I just wanted to be done. The agent did not respond to that statement. The agent asked him to confirm, on tape, that he understood that the WhatsApp messages had already been recovered. He confirmed that he understood. He was processed into federal custody at 11:42 p.m. The fingerprints went into NCIC at 12:06 a.m. By the time the sun came up, his name and his BOP employee identification were already moving through every federal correctional facility in the country. Hannah Greer learned about the arrest from a co-worker at the dental office on Saturday morning. By Sunday night, the ring was on the kitchen counter, and her car was loaded with everything she owned. If you are still with us, leave a comment letting us know where you are watching from. Cases like this one rarely reach a national audience because the institutions involved would rather move on quietly. Subscribe if you want to see more of them. We post a new one every week. The federal indictment came down on the 14th of May, 2024, in the Northern District of Georgia. The grand jury returned 4 counts. Count 1, bribery of a public official under 18 U.S.C. Pasuf 2101, charged through the federal nexus of his Bureau of Prisons employment. Count 2, providing contraband to a federal inmate under 18 U.S.C. Pasuf 1791. Count 3, conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine within a federal correctional facility. Count 4, using a communications facility to facilitate drug distribution under 21 U.S.C. Parvo 843B, tied directly to the WhatsApp exchange. He was represented by a federal defender named Anita Marsh-Rouse, a 15-year veteran of the office who had handled 3 prior BOP officer corruption cases in the district. Her strategy was not to fight the facts. The facts were unwinnable. The poll camera footage existed. The recovered pouch existed. The WhatsApp transcript existed. The Mirandized confession existed. Her strategy was to convert his post-arrest cooperation into the maximum available sentence reduction. He pleaded guilty on the 22nd of July, 2024, to 3 of the 4 counts. The conspiracy to distribute count was held in reserve until sentencing and ultimately dismissed in exchange for his testimony in the parallel prosecution of Calvin Moss, who had been arrested on the 2nd of May, and the federal case against Brianna Salier Toombs, who had been arrested the same day. Marquez Tatum was indicted on a superseding count of conspiracy to distribute and accepted an additional 6 years onto his existing 14-year sentence. The sentencing hearing was on the 19th of October, 2024, in the courtroom of U.S. District Judge Steve Jones. The government presented a sentencing memorandum that ran 41 pages. It included photographs from the poll camera. It included the full WhatsApp transcript printed in 12-point font with the smoking gun exchange highlighted in yellow. It included a statement from the warden of USP Atlanta that ran 3 paragraphs and used the phrase "a betrayal of the institutional trust" that makes federal corrections possible in the second sentence. There was no victim impact statement in the conventional sense. There was, instead, a written statement from the BOP's regional director, read aloud by the prosecutor at sentencing. It included this line, which appeared on the news that evening. "Every correctional officer in this country who walks through a staff entry tomorrow morning will do so under a slightly heavier shadow because of the conduct of this defendant. That shadow is the cost the rest of his profession will pay for his choice." Judge Jones spoke for nearly 6 minutes before pronouncing the sentence. He did not raise his voice. He addressed Hollifield by his full name. He said, in part, "Mr. Hollifield, you were not desperate. You were not coerced. You were not blackmailed. You were a federal employee with a steady salary, a pension, a fiancé, and a clean record, and you sold the integrity of a federal penitentiary across 4 months, and for a sum of money that this court finds, frankly, almost insulting to the harm caused. The architecture of a federal prison depends on an assumption, the assumption that the staff side of the door is the harder side to corrupt. Today, in this district, that assumption is weaker than it was yesterday. You did that, no one else." The sentence was 80 months, 6 years, and 8 months at FCI Beckley, a low-security federal facility in Beaver, West Virginia, selected specifically because no inmate at that institution was likely to have crossed paths with him during his time on Unit B1. 3 years of supervised release, $5,000 in forfeiture, a permanent ban on federal employment, lifetime decertification as a law enforcement officer in any U.S. jurisdiction. He was taken into custody from the courtroom. He did not look at the gallery. There was no one in the gallery for him to look at. His parents had driven down from Pickens County and had decided, on the courthouse steps that morning, that they were not going to be in the room when the sentence was read. The Bureau of Prisons issued a 4-paragraph statement the next day. It announced an upgrade to the staff entry screening protocol at USP Atlanta. It did not mention Tanner Hollifield by name. The upgrade included PAT searches and additional X-ray review for staff-side carry items, with a particular focus on insulated bags and false lining concealment. The Mylar with coffee grounds technique was added by name to the K-9 unit's quarterly retraining curriculum. Hannah Greer, on the advice of her parents and a lawyer in Marietta, returned the ring through a courier in November. The 4-wheeler was sold at a federal asset auction in Atlanta in January 2025 for $4,100. The proceeds were applied to his forfeiture. The credit union account was closed. The double wide in Pickens County still stands. His parents still live there. His brother still runs the heating and air route. His sister still works the floor at the hospital in Dahlonega. The Beagles, Rosie and Buster, are both buried under the porch now. He is scheduled for release in the summer of 2030. He will be 39 years old. He will have no federal pension. He will have no career to return to. He will have a felony conviction that will follow him through every job application, every apartment lease, every routine background check, for the rest of his life. He sold a federal penitentiary across 4 months for the price of a used 4-wheeler and the down payment on a wedding that did not happen. That was hard to watch, but the case on your screen right now might be the cleanest collapse of an institutional trust we have ever covered on this channel. Click it.